Well, government bailouts are not without economic costs. Should the government then continue rescuing ailing financial institutions? And joining us now is Nouriel Roubini, chairman of Roubini Global Economics Monitor and professor of economics at New York University. Are we at the beginning? Are we at the middle? Is it the end of it?
We're at the beginning of a very severe financial and banking crisis. Independent studies suggest that hundreds of banks are going to go belly up. The FDIC doesn't even have enough money to guarantee the deposit. They'll have to be recapitalized. There'll be many other broker-dealers that are going to get in trouble, insurance companies, hedge funds. So it'll be a very severe banking financial crisis like we haven't seen since the Great Depression.
There's something wrong there, right?
Absolutely. We have discovered there are really serious weaknesses in the financial system. There was excessive credit creation, there were bubbles, there was poor risk management, the rating agencies didn't do their job, and also the supervisors and regulators were literally asleep at the wheel. You know, when we're creating all these toxic mortgages, things like no down payment, interested only, negative amortization, teaser rates, no verification of income, assets, and jobs, about 60% of all mortgage origination was not just subprime, but subprime, near-prime, prime, home equity loans, piggyback loans, commercial real estate was all toxic because there was no proper supervision regulation of financial intermediation. Financial markets without rules and regulations are the law of the jungle. They are driven by greed, and greed has to be tempered by fear. And if you bail out people, then they don't even have the fear. And that's the risk we're facing right now, moral hazard.
And maybe that starts with the question of who's to blame. I mean, is it the Fed? Is it Bernanke? Is it Paulson? You know, who is to blame, and then how do they prevent this from going?
Many have to be blamed. Certainly the Fed cut the Fed funds rate, kept it too low for too long at 1%. Certainly the Fed and the other regulators were asleep at the wheel, did not regulate credit and mortgages. Certainly there was a huge amount of greed and stupidity, I would say, in financial markets. All these investors gambling for redemption, taking shareholders' money and risking it without any cost. Certainly the rating agency had lots of biases. So you can share the blame among many different agents. What needs to be done? In my view, you have to go back to a regulation supervision based on rules rather than just self-regulation. Self-regulation means no regulation. Market discipline did not work.
Nouriel, obviously we're talking about some big picture stuff with these bailouts, but the thing I'm trying to drive at, which I don't think viewers really get a sense of these days, is how much, you know, we know you say it's going to be about 10% of GDP, almost 10% in terms of how much this will cost us ultimately. But what does that mean for the economy? What does that mean for companies and also for the taxpayer in terms of having to fund this crisis, essentially?
That means that if the fiscal bailout cost is about 10% of GDP, we're going to the public debt something like $1.5 trillion of new debt.
Right.
Eventually we have to service this debt. It means that we have to raise taxes or cut spending. It means the interest rate on the public debt might go up. By the way, the other thing we've done so far is with the nationalization of Fannie and Freddie, we have technically made another $6 trillion of liability of these GSEs part of the public debt. That's another addition to the public debt. Because the net public debt is going up by less because also we're having the assets, but we're adding more and more to the stock of the public debt. Eventually the interest rate on public debt is going to higher. That's going to slow down growth, slow down investment. It's going to be costlier to borrow for firms, for households, and that's going to have a negative effect on economic growth in the long run. So we pay a cost for this disaster, for this financial crisis. It's going to affect our incomes, our purchasing power, and other variables of the story.
Right. And Nouriel, tell me, when do you see the light at the end of the tunnel? When do you see a recovery then?
I see this U.S. recession lasting 18 months. I believe it started already in the first quarter through the middle of next year. I think the home price is going to keep on falling through the end of 2009 by a cumulative of 40%. They've already fallen 25%. And I think that this financial crisis is going to linger with us for 2 or 3 years until we clean up the mess in the financial system. We're going to have 200-300 banks going to go bankrupt. The fiscal costs are going to be huge. There's going to be a severe liquidity and credit crunch. It's going to worsen before it gets any better. The light at the end of the tunnel so far is the one of the incoming train wreck. I don't see any real light at the end of the tunnel so far.
How many of the global economies will be in recession?
Currently, the data suggests that about 50% of global GDP is contracting. Is the Eurozone, is Japan, is Canada, is other advanced economies. 6 months ago it was only the US. Right now it's becoming an advanced advanced economy recession, half of world GDP is contracting, could become a global recession if there is a significant slowdown of growth in Russia and China and India and other emerging markets. That's another risk we're facing right now of a global recession.
All right, Nouriel, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the program. Nouriel Roubini, of a Global Economics Monitor and also Professor of Economics at NYU.